Today's reading is from the Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This is week 49. What is it to fail spiritually? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The first passage is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25. Jesus tells the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 of them wise and 5 foolish. They await their bridegroom, the Christ consciousness. The wise virgins keep the oil in their lamps, symbolic of their devotion, lit through the night. The foolish virgins place no oil in their lamps. These foolish ones are like the average devotee, going through the motions of outer ritual, but keeping no fire of love burning in the heart. When the bridegroom's coming is announced, the foolish virgins realize their mistake and hasten out to purchase oil. During their absence, the Christ consciousness comes and embraces those who have been awaiting him with devotion. The foolish ones, by their lackluster devotion, are not accepted by him. Watch, therefore, Jesus told his listeners, for you know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda describes the foolish virgin consciousness he encountered in the Mahamandal hermitage he stayed in as a young man in Benares. I was pleased, he wrote, that my new home possessed an attic where I managed to spend the dawn and morning hours. The ashram members, knowing little of meditation practices, thought I should employ my whole time in organizational duties. They gave me praise for my afternoon work in their office. Don't try to catch God so soon. This ridicule accompanied one of my early departures toward the attic. Later during meditation, I felt lifted as though bodily to a sphere uncircumscribed. Thy Master cometh today. A divine womanly voice came from everywhere and nowhere. This supernal experience was pierced by a shout from a definite locale. A young priest nicknamed Habu was calling me from the downstairs kitchen. Mukunda, enough of meditation. You are needed for an errand. The Divine Mother's words were not spoken for the benefit of that priest, the foolish virgin, but for Mukunda, the wise virgin. For this was the day his guru, Sri Yukteswar, came to him. Grieve not, friends, if you feel that you have been foolish. No error is forever. Someday, if you keep your lamp lit now, your opportunity will come. In the Bhagavad Gita, the 6th chapter, Krishna promises every devotee, Arjuna, none who works for the self-redemption will ever meet an evil destiny. Spiritual failure, though a deep disappointment, is always temporary. Eternal hellfire is but a projection of vindictiveness in the human mind. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Thank you, Arzu. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dharmaraj. This is my wife, Dharmini. Yesterday, someone fairly new asked me, what is the topic for the Sunday service tomorrow? And I said, no, hang on, but it's, what is it to fail spiritually? And she said, but we can't fail spiritually. And I said, that's the whole sermon. It's absolutely true. And so, again, if we pick up life by that string, it changes everything in terms of how we relate to our experiences. Why can't we fail spiritually? This gets kind of cosmic. When God wanted to create the universe, as it says in the Indian scriptures, to enjoy himself through many, he wanted to make creation. So how did he make it? I mean, did he go to the store and buy some rocks and cobble together a planet and throw it out there? Of course not. There's no store. There's no rocks. The only way he could do it was to vibrate a portion of himself to manifest out of himself. If there's anything but God, anything can only be made out of God. And so it says also in the scriptures that there's cycles of creation and dissolution, and these are referred to as days and nights of Brahma that last millions of years. But he says, at the beginning of a day of Brahma, I cast this whole lot out. And each one is making its journey back. It's because everything in a wave is duality, up and down. We read about duality, that everyone must go this way, must go that way. That if God cast us out, the only opposite to that direction is that we must inevitably return. This came up in a conversation Yogananda had with God, as he talks about in one of his talk tapes, where it came up in the context of suffering. He said, Lord, this suffering is unfair. I see that we are the deathless soul, but all, these others don't see. And it's not fair. You are always happy. You never had to be in suffering. Why do you try your suffering on us? We didn't ask to be created. And he said, the Lord said, I am bringing them all back to me. And Yogananda responded to the crowd, what are you going to say? He is bringing us all back to him. So the only question the only thing we have to be concerned about is, do we want to delay that return? That's all spiritual failure is just a delay. It's just temporary. Do we want to face away, or do we want to face toward God? Sometimes I think of it as like an escalator taking us up into the divine, and we can run down that escalator as far as we want. But eventually we tire and turn, and it just takes us back. It's not a perfect analogy, because by sitting still you can't just automatically improve. But still, it's not a bad one, especially when we're feeling badly. One thing about this whole topic, though, is when we say, what is it to fail spiritually, many of us have there's something in the heart that jerks, even at that question, even at that phrase. And why? It's because we remember when we've failed spiritually. We remember when we've made mistakes. We feel that. Sometimes when someone leaves the spiritual path, others, unfairly so, criticize that person. Well, they were just caught up in all this, and Why? I mean, why not be compassionate? I think partly because it awakens in us our own fear of saying, I remember when I left the spiritual path. I remember when I turned away, and I don't ever want to do that again. And so we have to remember that even when a slip is not a fall. There was an Indian saint named Sadhu Haridas who could manifest many miracles. In fact, he was very good at manifesting miracles. I think he lived in the 1800s. Some Christian missionaries came and were crossing over from the shore to a temple that was on a little island. And so they were on this boat, and he was taking them to the temple. I don't know the context of the story, but they were on a boat. And they said, you should believe in Jesus Christ, because he is really the true teacher of the true word. And he said, well, what, could your Christ do that I can't do? And they said, well, he could walk on water. And he said, is that all? And he jumped out of the boat and ran on the water, and the boat followed him wherever he went. But he fell spiritually. This has a happy ending. He abandoned his monastic vows and got married, which unfortunately in this context was to fail spiritually. I'm married and happily so. But in terms of this, he realized his mistake, and he went back to his guru, and he was, I can't remember if he was freed in that life or the next life, I'm not sure. But the reason I say this is because Yogananda was telling this story, and one of his disciples said, is that all? Just took him one more life after he failed like that? And Yogananda said, God is no tyrant. How much do you want to punish someone? As we've been quoting a lot, there was a woman who left Yogananda's monastic order, got married, had a daughter, and then came back. And the other nuns said, how can you show your face in this place after what you've done? And she said, do you want me to worship my mistakes? It's never a black and white binary thing. We succeeded, we failed. We're good, we're bad. The only thing that actually can be permanent for one lifetime, which we do have to watch for, is if you say, I'm a failure in some particular thing. And Yogananda actually said that in one of the talks I think we listened to last time, I'm not sure. There was a man who was on his deathbed and said, I've done many wrong things in my life. And Swami Kriyananda was with him. And when Swami went back to speak to Yogananda, Yogananda said he shouldn't have said that. Because when we say, I'm a failure, we close ourselves off. And God doesn't care. God, it's like if somebody doesn't, pass a spelling test in first grade, do you say, that's it, to the dungeon, forever? No, you say, all right, we'll study harder, take it again. Every one of our tests we'll take again, and we just have to guard against. So what do we do when we do feel like we failed? We just, as Swami said once when he was trying to quit smoking, he said, I'm going to quit smoking every morning, and then by lunchtime it was again time for a cigarette because it tasted so good with the coffee, apparently. And every time he slipped back into it, he said, I haven't yet succeeded. And over the course of a year, he got rid of that habit just that way. There was no Nicorette patches or anything like that. He just said, I haven't yet succeeded. So when we set our will to correct something or to achieve something and we don't succeed, just say that, I haven't yet succeeded, but I will go on to the end. Because it keeps our willpower up. The whole question of success and failure often comes down to our willpower to keep ourselves open. In terms of this I had a strange experience yesterday in terms of the power of delusion, however. And first of all, speaking of delusion, Master also said, I wanted to add this point. I don't ask that you overcome delusion or temptation. I only ask that you resist it. Sometimes it's too strong. Sometimes even Arjuna says to Krishna, 3,000 years ago, why is man compelled against his will to do wrong? And Krishna says, basically, it's the power of delusion. It's also the power of karma. Sometimes we can't control what actually happens, and we can't stop ourselves. I'll give you a very trivial, embarrassing example. yesterday, I was going to make some tea, and so it was first thing in the morning, and so I thought, all right, we have some milk. So I sipped the milk, and I thought, is this milk bad? It doesn't taste quite right. And then I asked her, do you want to try it? She said, no. And so I said, well, I can't remember what milk tastes like, I think. And then I said, I don't want it to be bad. Because if it's bad, I'm going to have to go downstairs, or I'm going to have to go to the store, and it would just be really nice if it could just be good. So I took another sip, trying to make it not bad. And I thought, no, it's bad. And then I got really ill. As any of you who were at the Christmas party last night may know. I made tea with it anyway, that's right. Just to increase the embarrassment, I did make tea with it, that's right. That's right, I didn't know it was bad. I didn't admit that it was bad. I just thought, well, the heat will make it right again. And then, about 10 minutes later, I started to go, I don't feel so good. Talk about stupidity. We say that anger or frustration arises from wanting things to be other than they are. And I wanted that milk not to be sour. And it was not quite against my will, unfortunately. It was with my active will that I just drank. I was drinking poison. I got sick. And just to finish the story off, I actually got really sick, which I won't go into the details. But I was trying to get down to the Christmas party, and I was shaking, I was sweating, was just in really bad shape, and I just couldn't. I said, I can't go, I'm sorry. And I finally prayed, saying, Lord, I have got myself into this situation by my own foolishness, but I would like to go to that party, but I can't go looking like this because I'll just look like this corpse. And so I suddenly felt the desire to eat something. And so I started eating just some noodles thing. And it was amazing how it was almost like my hand was feeding myself. And I thought, is this working? And I felt worse and worse and worse. And again, I won't go into the details. But suddenly, after the clearing of my system and a shower, I said, okay, well, I have to go back to bed. Sorry, those weren't related. But and I just started to go. I thought, okay, I stepped out of the shower, and I wanted to go to the bed, but instead I turned towards the sink. And I found myself starting to shave and starting to kind of, put the corpse together a little bit. And lo and behold, I had the energy to come down. And so that's another thing, is say, Lord, it's up to you to animate me. It's up to you to do the right thing. It's up to you to speak and act through me because I can't do it. And then we find out whether he says, no, it's better for you to stay in bed, or no, it's better for you to go, I'll do it. This parable of the wise and foolish virgins, though, also sometimes has a little sting to it, because the 5 virgins didn't have the oil, which again represents devotion, in their lamps, and the wise virgins did. And the one in the Bible gets even worse. It says that when they woke up, the foolish one said, we don't have any oil, give us some of your oil. And the wise one said, no. Go out and get some. And then when they were out, that's when the bridegroom came. And it feels a little unfair. But one of the symbols behind that, or that's partly symbolic of, we can't give devotion to anyone. And we can't receive it from anyone. We have to nurture it within ourselves. That's the great blessing that all of us have of wanting to even be interested in something like this on Sunday morning, is that we have that devotion, we have that hunger, we have that interest. That can't be implanted. It can't be taught. It can't be given. One of Master's disciples said to him, give me devotion. And Yogananda said, you are like a poor person saying, give me the money so I can buy what I want. First, you must earn the money. We must earn devotion. We must cultivate it. It's very easy, in a way, if we use our willpower to keep our hearts open. And to do little things to stay engaged, like One woman was telling us that regardless of how her morning routine goes, she was in the level 1 Learn to Meditate class, she has this big plan of how she's going to have her sadhana in the morning. And if the alarm doesn't go off or whatever, she says, rather than get too frustrated, I just chant on my way walking to work. And I keep that positive thought. Another one said, I define myself as a meditator. Maybe I was a meditator who didn't meditate this morning, but it's not that because I meditate or am not in the morning is the whole thing. Oh, one meditation, no longer a meditator. Of course not. We have to find ways to encourage ourselves. I like to think of the wise and foolish virgins that the wise ones were foolish last time. And they thought, oh, never going to do that again. And so they kept like vats of oil in their bedroom to make sure that they wouldn't miss him, and they didn't. And that the foolish ones, after all, they were trying to meet him. They were devotees after all. Again, they could have been doing a lot of other things. And so they too, maybe, the next time around. One of the greatest things a friend said to me when I was in college and so mad at myself every time I make a mistake, she just said, doing it wrong this time means you'll probably do it right next time, because you won't forget the pain of having done it wrong and say, I won't do that again. And it's true. We get multiple chances. We can't view life as something that has just a beginning and an end in terms of a particular action, because we don't know the rest of the story. We don't know how what we've done now will affect us a year or 2 or 3 from now, or how it will help someone else. Maybe we didn't get something, but it helped someone else. That's why Krishna says very directly to Arjuna, my devotee is never lost. Period. And by my means God's devotee, not just Krishna's devotees. God's devotees are never lost. And all of us, whether we're consciously seeking or not, are coming back to him. So, what happens then when we are making a mistake? Again, mentally resist it. Sometimes just openly, you cling to the Guru's feet. If you have a Guru, cling to God. Say, I'm going in this wrong direction. You've got to help me. Or, as someone said to me recently, I got angry at God. I got angry at the Guru. How can you let this happen? Why are you doing this? This is unfair. I'm doing everything for you, and this is how you treat me, or you let this happen? That's good too, because we're still involving God in the conversation. Like when Saint Teresa of Avila was crossing the river on her horse, and she was very old, and she was trying to still found one more monastery, and the river was flooded and took her away. And all of her disciples thought she was lost. And she suddenly found herself on the opposite bank, dry, standing with Christ. And he said, don't worry, Teresa, this is how I treat all my friends. And she said, my Lord, that's why you have so few. So we can feel that way. We're doing everything we can, and then we get another smack. But it's just a purification. That's all. Just taking off some karma. There was a member of Ananda who had a dream that he was on this beach, and he was taking little spoonfuls of tar. There was this sort of tar, and he was taking it and trying to separate the tar and throw it into the ocean. Let's leave the environmental considerations out for the moment. And he was just, but it was hard because it was sticking, and it was sticking to him, and it was sticking to itself, and he was just working really hard, and he realized that this tar was his karma. And he looked, and he saw this mountain of tar, and he started to despair because of how slowly it was going. But then he heard behind him this noise, like this engine rumbling, this machinery. And he turned, and it was this huge, like, backhoe. And Yogananda was driving it, and it was just taking just huge dumps and tossing them into the ocean. So we have to remember how much help we actually have. And another question that comes up is this whole question of worthiness. Am I worthy? Am I good? Am I good enough? And, on a certain level, truthfully, we aren't fully worthy of God, because if we were fully worthy of God, we would be liberated, and we wouldn't be sitting in these chairs. We'd be cavorting around up in the universe. Because to be fully ready means to receive on every level, means the ego is gone. And so, yes, that's true, but that's the whole spiritual path. The whole goal of the spiritual path is to become fully worthy. We are all worthy enough. Yes, we have our mistakes. Yes, we have, whatever it is, but those aren't us. Those are just little things. So why do we emphasize them so much? Because God doesn't judge us that way, but we judge ourselves. And why do we judge ourselves? Well, it's not even entirely we who do the judging. It is the ego. The ego says, "Oh, that was horrible." Why? Because the ego says, look, this is the only way I get to stay in business. I have to keep you down. Because if I don't keep you down, you're going to go up and I'm going to be gone. And so this whole self-perpetuating thing goes on. Ooh, you made that mistake. Oh, unforgivable. And we just sit there because the ego convinces us that we have to sit here like this in a tiny little room with the covers over our head saying, I'm wrong, I can't move. And the ego says, excellent. But the ego is bound to lose, and it knows this. So we can just say, you know what, I made this mistake, so what? Too bad. Oh well, Lord, I'm here anyway. If you haven't struck me down, then I'm just going to keep on going. Go forward. Almost, Sri Yukteswar said, anything that can be done can be undone. And sometimes literally so, by saying to the person, I'm sorry I was so reactive. Or maybe if you can't work it out with that person, you can work it out with the next person. In this regard, what was I going to say before that? There was speaking of the ego, operating in this negative way, there was a woman who had, during Ananda Village's early times, had somehow been involved, I don't know the specifics, in a Sunday service that Swami Kriyananda was doing. And she did something that basically put Swami in a very awkward spot. And so the story is always told in this cryptic manner, so I don't exactly know what happened. But she felt horrible afterwards. And she basically spent that whole evening, the next day, actually the next week, just lamenting about how much love she felt for him and how she had really messed things up for him. And she was just talking to her friends. She was just, saying it was so bad. And the next Sunday, Swami came to give the service and noticed she wasn't there. And he said, well, where is she? And they said, oh, well, she's feeling really badly about what happened last Sunday. And he said, what ego? He said, of course you're going to make mistakes. Of course we all make mistakes. We're incarnated beings here. We're not perfect yet. Of course there will be mistakes. So what? Don't cling to them. That's nothing. It's just, again, it's a negative form of ego to just say, oh, no, I'm so unworthy. Just say, you know what? I'm good enough. Because here I am, I'm trying to do good. And besides, Lord, this is the way I am, for better or worse. This is where I am. I'm going to take the next step forward. So let us never despair. Remember, my devotee is never lost. And remember, as a friend of mine said once, some of the things that we say to ourselves, we would never say to, like, our best friend, in terms of the hurtful things we can heap onto ourselves. We would never say to our best friend, or to anyone, really. So why trouble ourselves? Just say, you know what? I'm not even interested that much in myself. I'm interested in you, and that's where I want to go. I want to close with this reading from Whispers. I saw the title and I couldn't resist. My soul submarine is searching for thee. Yogananda was so creative and fearless. I found myself suffocating in the dark vapors of worldly ambition as my vessel sailed over life's seas. Fearful of dying in delusion, I sought out and boarded the submarine of deep dedication and dove deep into my inner self. The silent depths of thy consciousness I saw, at first shimmering before me, a light which spoke to me of fulfillments never before dreamed of. Diving deeper still, the submarine of my mind moved into astral seas, so rarely plumbed, in search of thee. Suddenly, probing with searchlight vision, my soul submarine found itself in a new universe. I was surrounded on all sides by a mystic flaming radiance. Overwhelmed by thy supernal blessings, I beheld and reveled in thy presence everywhere.